All right. Welcome, everybody, for another episode of Talking Trout. We're excited to have you with us in the middle of winter. Get together and talk about fishing. It seems to be about the best thing we can do right about now. And we're super excited to have Kyle Zempel here from Black Earth Angling Company. Kyle has the prestigious, Kyle is our first return guest on since we started Talking Trout about two and a half years ago. So I don't know if you remember, Kyle was maybe our third or fourth episode that we did. Kyle came on and he talked about photography when you're out on a stream and how to take care of, how to handle the fish and get a good fish picture and do that responsibly. And it was a pretty cool presentation. And so we know Kyle's busy most of the year guiding. And this just happens to be kind of a slow spot. So we found a sweet spot where we could get him back in here, and we're going to pick his brain about what it's like to hire a guide and go on that trip, and how to kind of make the most of your time. You know, it's probably not something that a lot of us do all the time, but probably if you haven't done it before, I would highly recommend it. Especially someone like Kyle or somebody local that's knowledgeable. Just getting a chance to hang out with them for half a day or a day, whatever it is, spend some time in the boat or spend some time on the water with them. And you really can improve your knowledge by leaps and bounds by spending that time with somebody who's willing to share their knowledge. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Kyle, and say the floor is yours. Again, reminder, folks, put your questions in the chat box. We'll save plenty of time for Q&A at the end. So if you got questions for the guide, you can certainly ask them at the end, and or just put them in the chat box, and I'll follow along as Kyle gives his presentation. So Kyle, welcome.
Oh yeah, thanks. I happy to be here. Yeah, it's always it's a nice little way to chat with everybody and not have to necessarily leave my house, which is probably something I need to do this time of year. But I'll be honest, it's nice to do it from right here, my own home, and get done and be able to have a beer in my house. So I appreciate it, and everyone tuning in. So yeah, yeah, Mike and I were talking about what would be a good topic, and it's kind of one right underneath our nose here. Like some tips and tricks for going out with a guide and what to expect. And some people haven't hired a guide before. Some people have hired guides every time they go fishing. So I think hopefully there'll be something in here for everybody. Being a guide, I come in with a little different perspective, I think, than a lot of people. And I've also hired guides all over the place, and find great value in what they offer. So I can hopefully give a little nice perspective on both sides of the coin on this one. So I'll kind of jump right in, and I have a little presentation here. We'll go through that, and like Mike said, I'll leave plenty of time at the end here for some questions, and yeah, looking forward to it. Let's see here. Give me a thumbs up if you guys can see that. All right, excellent. Well, for some of you, I know I see some familiar names on the screen here, but for those who don't know me, I'm the owner and head guide for Black Earth Angling Company. This is our 10th year in business, which is pretty exciting. It's kind of flown by, and it's hard to believe that it's been 10 years now. And I've been the main guide for those 10 years, and I've probably been full time for 7 of those 10 years. The first 3 were kind of just building things up until I was able to kind of take a break from my other jobs and do this full time. So extremely fortunate to be able to do this full time, and it's a whole lot of work, but I really enjoy it, and it's something that I've been able to build, and yeah, I'm extremely grateful for being able to take people on the water and kind of make people or, sharing people's passions is really what I do, which is really exciting. So, if you guys have followed along with me, you've seen that I've kind of fished all over, and I've hired guides kind of all over the world, from places all over the United States to guides and places that you know you probably wouldn't be able to find a guide. So from all walks of great guides to really, really bad guides, and I'm sure I'll be able to share some stories here for you. But I'm going to kind of just go through like the process, right? We'll start with like hiring a guide. How do you find one? That type of thing. And I think the first thing first is like, what are you looking for? A lot of times when I'm hiring a guide, it's because I'm traveling somewhere, and I don't know the area. And so I like to do a lot of do-it-yourself fishing. I really, really love like do-it-yourself bone fishing. When I go to Patagonia, I do plenty of trout fishing around here, and I kind of know the ins and outs of trout fishing, but that local knowledge is, kind of invaluable. So a lot of times when I'm traveling somewhere, I try to get a guide for a minimum of 2 days, kind of right away when I get there, if I can. That kind of like sets the pace for you. When we went to this past winter, when we were in Patagonia, we had a guide for the first 2 days. And the nice thing is they know what restaurants to go to. They know the ins and outs of town and where to get the best this and that. And like sometimes that stuff is more valuable than the fishing knowledge, honestly. And and then also like if I plan to do some DIY fishing, it's much easier to ask a guide for a couple tips and tricks, or maybe a location to go to if you've hired them. A lot of guides will probably give you a pretty generic answer if you just go out and call them and say, hey, can you tell me where the best spots to fish are? He makes his living by taking people fishing, and if you throw them a bone and go out guiding with them, or on a guided trip with them, usually they'll loosen that up a little bit and be able to share maybe some of their secret spots. So that's a hot tip for you. But also, like, maybe you're new to fly fishing and you want to learn, and I think a guide's a great way to kind of lessen that learning curve that fly fishing kind of comes with. We've all been doing this, and a full-time guide, I mean, it's their job to be a teacher and an instructor, and take people who've never done it before and show them how to do it. And I think there's a lot of value in that as well. So figure out what you're really looking for, right? I think is the biggest thing, and then go from there. And then get recommendations, or do your research. If someone recommends a guide, so they have a really good time with them, that's solid gold, right? That's a lot of how my business operates, is just good word of mouth. And I get a lot of new people I get are just simply recommendations from somebody else I've taken out fishing. But if you go into a place where you don't know anybody and no one's been there, do some research, right? First of all, you want to figure out what the going rate is, right? Some places you'll see a wide range, other places everyone will have the same price. But generally speaking, you don't want to go with the cheapest guide. Usually that means that they're not, maybe not experienced, or it's something they do kind of part-time. You definitely want to go with somebody who's within $100 of that going rate in the area. So, and you want to know how long they've been in business. So do a little research there. If it's someone who's just popped up, they may not have the experience that you're looking for. So definitely see how long they've been guiding. Try to if you know the guide's name, just do a simple Google search and see what you find. I think a lot of times that'll be able to tell you whether or not they're kind of a legitimate guide in the area. And again, this kind of goes hand in hand with that last one. Are they full or part-time? There's nothing wrong with part-time guides. There's a lot of great part-time guides out there who simply, like, it's their side hustle. They do it on the weekends. But someone who's full-time is kind of out there day after day after day. They really, really have their finger on the pulse of things, and that's kind of the advantage of someone who's out there all the time. Simply just the amount of time they're spending on the water, and they usually have their finger on the pulse pretty good at that point. So, and then this is kind of something new, and hate to have to even to talk about it, but kind of beware of influencers. It's an interesting world we live in right now where, if I know how to use a social media platform, I can go on there and basically get thousands of followers, which kind of gives you some sort of credit, but really you don't have any credit on the water. And it's kind of something we've been running into, and people have been having issues like booking someone and then finding out that, oh, they've only been guiding for 2 months, but they have a lot of really nice pictures, and they're reaching a large mass of people through their social media power. So just be a little bit aware of that. Like, do your homework, search them, make sure that they are indeed a legitimate guide, and I think you'll get your money's worth out of it. And then get on the horn and talk to them. I think it's one of the things that I try to do a lot, is like get on the phone with people. There's a lot of forms of communication these days: Facebook Messenger, Instagram Messenger, email. Sometimes it's nice just to call somebody and talk to them on the phone. You can sometimes get a good feel for how this guy operates, and whether or not they're responsive, that type of thing. I think it's really important just to, if you can, you're going to spend a day in a boat with them, you might as well like have a chat with them quick over the phone. I think it's really important. Excuse me. And kind of building on that one, this is, the conversation before you book, I think, are, some of the things that I generally am asking when I go to book a guide, and when people are calling me, the ones who kind of get the best out of it are the ones who, you want to know when prime time is. And don't expect, if prime time is in 2 months, don't necessarily expect to get a day. You may have to book for the next year in prime time. And when the guide says, hey, prime time's July, and we book up soon, like they generally mean that. The good guides do book up fast. Like, most of my summer is like fully booked at this point. I know I have a couple of gaps here and there, but if you're specific dates you're looking for, I think it's really important that you, kind of call early. This is the time of the year you should be looking for guides for the coming, summer months. And you should be able to, wiggle your way in somewhere. But, the more popular the guide, maybe the further out they're booked. I know some of the saltwater guides are, 2 years out at some points here. So, again, if you're looking for a specific person, get in early. And then don't disregard the shoulder seasons. I think it's really easy to read about what is the most, like the most popular time to be there. But most of the guides, our job is to find fish, right? And so, and kind of have our fingers on the pulse of things. And so if you come outside, like, our big thing, like our most popular time is kind of that crash period, kind of the peak of summer. But there's some really, really, really good fishing to be had on the outsides of that. But everyone kind of calls and they want that crash period. Well, that's the first thing to book up. And then people are a little disappointed when I say I don't have any more dates. However, there are some really cool things that happen outside of those times. And we're out there every day, so we know what's going on. As long as the guide said it's a good time, I think your safe bet is to trust them and get out there. So don't disregard those shoulder seasons. There can be a lot of really good fishing to be had. And a lot of times, in my profession, I guide throughout a peak season, right? Basically, if it's good fishing here, it's good fishing in the northern hemisphere. So if I want to go fish somewhere else, I kind of am forced to fish a lot of those shoulder seasons, and I do. And I've had great fishing in all these places where, according to the calendar and everything you read, it's not a great time to be there. But if you have a good guide, they know where the fish are. They're going to get you into kind of the best situation that you can get in that time of year. So something to keep in mind. And then some questions you want to be asking them right off the bat. Like this is a good time to ask them when you get them on the phone and you're about to book. Where's a good location to stay? When should I book this by? Some guides are going to say it's too far out. We don't know where we're going to be fishing for sure. Other guides always fish out in the same area. They're going to say, yeah, here's the hotel we want you to get in. And again, by doing this early when you book your trip, you're not going to run into any issues of trying to find lodging last minute and scrambling, or having to stay an hour away from where you're going to be fishing and making a long drive. So it just makes everything go a little bit smoother on the day that you end up going fishing. And if you're a fly tyer, this is a great time to be asking, what flies should I tie? Obviously, most guys will provide flies, but if you do like to bring your own, ask early so that you have time to work on those flies. And then I think this is an important one, a rod line setup. Most of the guides kind of have a preference as far as what kind of line they like for the type of fishing that they're going to be doing, or a couple lines that they really like. If you're looking to get a new line, or just tell him what you have and he'll say, yeah, this is, he or she will say, yeah, this is great. You know, ask them, they're gonna tell you, and try to follow what they say. Like usually they choose those lines for a specific reason. You know, just because the guy at the fly shop says, nah, you should be getting this fly line. Sometimes if you're going on a specific trip, you want to trust what the guide says. He's the one out there with the experience using it. So, and then ask if they have a what to bring list. I have a what, for all my customers, I have a what to bring list. I send it to you, so you have everything you need and everything to pack for the day, and try to stick to that. We have I don't know what it is about some folks wanting to bring lots and lots of extra gear, but if it's not on the list, you probably don't need it. So that just helps kind of streamline everything for your day on the water as well, so you're not bringing too much stuff in the boat, that kind of thing. And then, you know, asking what kind of casting situations you're going to find yourself in. Am I going to need to make 60-foot casts? Am I need to make 30-foot casts? Is it mainly roll casting? You know, is it require extreme accuracy? You know, is it windy? Like, these are all good questions to know so that you can kind of prepare yourself leading up to the trip. And again, you know, some of these travel trips that you go on, it's like, you know, yeah, expect it to be windy. And if it's not, like, then be surprised. So that'll help me, you know, kind of transition to the next thing here. And that's, you know, to practice some casting. But also, like, what's the refund cancellation policy? That's good to know right off the bat. If you're uncomfortable with it, then it's probably something that you may not, you know, you might not have to book with this guide, but a lot of them are pretty similar. And it's just important to know that right off the bat so that there's no surprises if, you know, you get inclement weather or something like that. But so we'll move on to the guide trip preparation here. So if you're just doing this without a partner, it's nice to line up a partner. If you want to fish with somebody and split the cost of a boat, which is a really nice way to do it. If you look at it that way, it's not too bad of a price for a guided day. And you know, ideally, it's nice to have someone who's similar skill level as you, but it's certainly not a must by any means. A lot of people actually get others into fly fishing, you know, by being experienced and bringing someone, a friend who may be curious about it along. But then go into the day knowing that there's going to be a little bit of adjustment as far as maybe distance from the bank, or, you know, speed at which you're fishing, because the guide's generally going to favor that beginner, just so that they have a good experience and will want to come back. So be aware of that. Get your rod and line set up, you know, put it all together, get it out, practice casting. You know, I always tell folks when we go bone fishing to, you know, find a windy day, go to a ballpark and stand on the pitcher's mound and cast a home plate and see how many times you can put it on home plate, especially if you don't have any water around. But if you can get on water, that's great. And that's a great time to maybe consider going on some more local guided trips. If you're going to be traveling somewhere for some guided fishing, I think it's just, you know, the more reps you can get in and knock the rust off, the better you're going to be. And, you know, again, you know, these trips cost money and they're not exactly cheap. So you want to get your money's worth. And I think that's a really good way to make sure that you're coming into the day prepared, is that you've just picked up that rod, especially if it's a new line or a new rod. Like, get familiar with it, have some reps doing it. You want to spend half the day learning how to use your equipment when you get out there. So, Tie your flies, of course, get those tied up. Purchase necessary licenses. This is a big one, and make sure you ask about that if they haven't told you. Make sure you show up with that stuff. That's really important. And then we'll go into guide trip preparation. Like this would be, probably this would be more 1 to 2 weeks out. Where the last stuff there was maybe further out, maybe months out. But as you're a week or two out, that's a great time to touch base with your guide. And it's really important. I get this all the time. Don't panic. Like if you're on the guide's calendar, you'll hear from them. But it's a nice thing to kind of, send a message, give them a call, shoot them a text, however your form of communication is with that guide, about 1 to 2 weeks out. That just, lets them know, hey, you're curious about date and time, or time and meeting location, and the guide will get back to you. Most of the time, I have some people who, if they don't hear back from me within an hour, they're calling me again. We are on the water every single day, and we have all our other trips to follow up with as well. So again, don't panic. Obviously, if you're 24 hours out and you still haven't heard from your guide, then maybe I would be a little more worried. But most of the time, they're going to get back to you. They want your business. So they're going to be in touch. And I think being honest, once you touch base with that guide, that's a good time to kind of have some more of those conversations, because oftentimes when you book, you may be booking with a fly shop, you may be booking with, an outfitter, and they don't know who your guide is going to be quite yet. So this would be the time where you talk to the person that will actually be taking you out, especially in a situation where it's more of an outfitter where they hire, they send customers out with different guides, and they have a central booking location. And that's a good time, you want to just be straightforward with the guide, right? Like they deal with beginners, they deal with experts, and everywhere in between. There's no reason to kind of, mislead the guide about what your skill level is. I think it's best if the more honest you are and upfront you are about your skill level, the better suited that, they can pick a stretch that's maybe really good for, this skill level, or, they can kind of custom fit the day for you, which is really nice. So, and again, any limitations you have, like, you have a hard time getting up and down steep terrain, waiting isn't your favorite, all that type of stuff is really important for the guide to know a couple weeks out, just so they can plan ahead as to where they're going to take you out fishing. Preferences. I have some people who I just don't like nymphing. I only want to fish dry flies, or, I like deer hair bugs, and that's all I want to fish. That's fine to have your preferences. And it's nice for us to know as the guide what those preferences are going into it, instead of that moment when we arrive at the stream, and this is a spot that, is best nymphed, right? So again, it just helps the guide prepare for getting you the trip that you want. Is basically what we're doing there. And then your expectations, hey, I've been having a really hard time with my roll cast. I'd really like to, add a little distance or work on my double haul a little bit, or my hook setting sucks, and I really want to focus on that. Or even this reading water, anything like that you really want to work on. We usually have a little questionnaire you fill out before the trip, and it kind of has is there anything you want to work on specifically? And that gets logged into our notes. So when we pull you up in our calendar, we can click on that and say, hey, all right, Joe wants to work on, his double haul today. So we can take some time and make sure that you get to do that. And a good guide should, take these, expectations into consideration for you. And then you're going to figure out the meeting time and location. And, sometimes, in my situation, the river levels are kind of always changing, and especially in a time where there's maybe a lot of precipitation, or maybe there's heavy winds, and we need to go on a certain stretch of water to, be in the lee of the winds. We may not know until a day out as to where, or even sometimes, ideally not, but sometimes just the morning of, where we're at, the actual location we're going to be fishing. So that may change, but ideally, if weather's been stable, things have been good. Usually, your guide will know good place or like a spot, time, and place you're going to meet, and go from there. So, and then what's the lunch program? Some guides are starting to go away from making lunches, and some of them actually require you to bring a lunch for them and yourself, or just for yourself. It's really good to know that up front, so you don't show up thinking that the guide's going to provide you with lunch, and you're going to be eating your water bottle for for lunch that day. So that's really important, I think, is to just kind of get that squared away and figure out which lunch program is going to be. And also, if you have any dietary restrictions, that's a really good time to let them know, so they don't prepare your lunch already and then have to go back and redo it. So. All right, so the big day. And this would be kind of more so things in the parking lot, before you actually get out onto the water. First things first, arrive on time, right? No one likes you to be late. And if you are late, I would expect that to come out of my day of fishing. Obviously stuff happens. If you are running late, just a simple text message is greatly appreciated from your guide, to your guide, that, hey, something happened, I hit traffic, there's an accident, whatever. The kid slept in, whatever it is, let us know. And just kind of a rough idea how late you're going to be. That's super helpful. But generally, try to be on time. And then arrive with realistic expectations, right? I think this is just important for a lot of reasons. If you're going trout fishing on a spring day, it's a bluebird sky, not a cloud in the sky, like, trout are going to be spooky, fishing is going to be tough. Like, that just is what it's going to be, right? And kind of, so you need to adjust your expectations for that. If it's 20 miles an hour out of the, howling down the river channel, like, it's going to be tough. Boat management, keeping you a specific distance from the bank is going to get difficult. All those things come into play when you arrive, right? So just come into the day with realistic expectations, right? It should be kind of a sliding scale. If the guide's super jacked up and it's a perfect day for fishing, then you can kind of get ahead of yourself a little bit. But for the most part, keep your expectations in check, based on kind of the conditions, especially. Respect the boat and the equipment. This one, if anyone's fished anywhere in the salt water where there's skiffs, the guides are extremely particular about having dirty shoes in their boat. Usually they'll have a towel laid down or something like that. If you haven't done that before, if you haven't done a saltwater trip before and you see the guide lays a towel down, that's for you to step on and clean your shoes off. Same thing when you're getting in and out of if you're getting in and out of someone's boat, wipe your feet, or kind of give your foot a slosh so you're not dragging a bunch of mud or rock into their boat. Same thing with a vehicle. If you're moving spots from a stream and you're covered in mud, like, maybe walk over the stream and try to clean your mud off a little bit. We're in the outdoors, things are going to get dirty, we understand that. But sometimes it's like, this is our office. Try to show a little respect for what comes into it. And then same thing with equipment. If you are using someone's rod, like, don't just drop and bang the reel around it inside the boat, which I see all the time. And every time it bangs, like, kind of wince a little bit. But again, just be respectful of the stuff. And one of the things I think is really important that I see a lot of is, if you get a snag, not to sit and yank on the rod with two hands trying to free it. Like, ask the guide how you'd like to handle that situation, especially if it's not your rod. So Those are just some things to keep your guide happy. And then, some of these things are like ask before you help. If I'm putting the boat in, I have my routine of things, and like in my mind, I have all the mental checklists that I go through, and I hit all those things, and I know I'm ready to go and we're ready to hit the water. If you come in and start moving things around, that can kind of screw that up and kind of start your day off on the wrong foot. Again, some guides are really particular about the way they start their day, and others maybe not so much. But it's always nice just to ask, hey, where would you like rods? And just hang on to your rods if they're rigged up until the guy says, okay, yeah, here, I like them. You can put them there, or I'll take them and I'll store them in the boat. That type of stuff. Just again, it's better to ask before just doing something. Again, that's their domain. They're the captain of the ship. So make sure you ask what's allowed before you go ahead and do something, and that'll just kind of start the day off on the right foot. If you kind of upset your guide right off the bat, that's generally not a good start to the day, and it's always makes for an awkward morning. So, and then leave unnecessary gear in the vehicle. If you rigged your rod up, you don't need to bring your rod tube. Leave that in the car, right? If you have a boat bag with a bunch of unnecessary stuff in there that you're not going to use, or the guide has everything you need, just leave that in the car. That's totally fine. And if you don't know, just ask, right? A lot of times someone will bring a cooler with a couple beers or some sodas or some cold, drinks or whatever that they want. And, I'll say, hey, we can throw those in my cooler. Then you can just leave your cooler here, right? Perfect. And the one less thing in the boat makes for everything's a little bit better throughout the day with less stuff in the boat. So again, if you don't know, just ask. They'll let you know how they like it. So now we're on the water here. And first things first, listen to your guide, right? You may not always agree with what they have to say, but most of the time they're saying it for a reason. We are out there day in and day out. There's a reason you're paying us to come out there and be in our boat, and it's largely for our knowledge, right, of what we know about the river. If we ask you to do something, we're doing it for a reason. We're not doing it for our health. We're trying to get you into fish. Again, it's one of those things that, when we all sit around as guides and have chats, like this is the one thing that's just kind of always pops up, right? Your guide tells you, hey, I want you leading the boat, lead the boat, right? And if you see something you like behind, back where it's not leading the boat, you probably shouldn't cast there unless the guide says, hey, you missed that spot, cast back there, right? Or simply just ask, right? If you don't understand why a guide is telling you to do something, just ask them, right? And they'll be able to give you an explanation, or a good guide will anyways, as to why we're doing those things, right? And most of the time they're going to tell you why we do what we do. But it's important to listen to what we say. We're telling you again to do it for a reason, and it's going to ultimately probably get you into fish. And again, here we go. Ask questions, right? I don't think you can ask enough questions, really. Like I generally enjoy people who ask a lot of questions and are curious about why we're doing things. That's how you learn. Some people go out, maybe they hire a local guide, and let's just say in the Madison area here, and they want to learn some new techniques on the local trout streams, or they want to work on a couple things, right? Ask lots of questions. That's you're getting, you'll get a lot more bang for your buck if you're asking questions as to, hey, why'd you change that over? What's this type of indicator you use? All those types of things are going to help you become a better angler, right? And I generally find that people who ask a lot of questions while we're doing stuff are generally pretty good anglers. They may not be the best casters or something like that, but as far as, understanding the big picture of what we're trying to do, they generally are pretty good overall, I would say. So be curious and ask questions. And accept respectable criticism, right? A good guide shouldn't yell at you, right, if you're doing something wrong. And he certainly shouldn't be upset if you made a mistake, if he didn't tell you what to do before making that mistake, right? You can be upset and say, hey, next time I would like you to do it this way. But to be upset because you missed that fish without him telling you, or him or her telling you, that you weren't supposed to lift the fly off the ground, that's on the guide, that's not on you. So I think, again, that's what I mean by respectable criticism, right? And if a guy is upset and say, hey, well, you didn't tell me to do that, or you know what I mean, you didn't touch base on that part of the thing. And sometimes a guy will forget that, hey, I forgot to go over that we only strip set here, or something along those lines. But I think it's really important to be able to accept some criticism. And again, we're out there trying to get you into fish. We're not trying to be mean to anybody. And sometimes, it kind of takes, oftentimes you can't see what you're doing and you keep repeating a mistake. And sometimes it takes a little bit of like, hey, this is what you're doing wrong. We need to fix this if we're going to have a good day. And if you continue to do that, like, we're going to struggle all day long. And nobody you don't want to struggle. I don't want to watch you struggle all day long, because my goal is to get you into fish and have a good time. So, that's my ultimate goal, is making sure that we're getting to where we want to be. So again, if criticism's coming, it's mainly just understand that it's to get you to where we want you to be, and want you to get into those fish, or fix that mistake that you're making. Respect the fish in the fishery. This one is important. You don't need to take a picture of every fish you catch. And oftentimes, it's nice to, if it's one that means a lot to you, say, hey, can I get a picture of that? And get your picture, get that fish back in the water, especially if we're obviously in a catch and release situation. Don't drop the foot, avoid trying to drop the fish on dry land, in the boat, that type of thing. Those things will all kind of upset people. So I think that one's pretty well self-explanatory. And this one I run into once in a while. It's okay to end early. Like, don't feel that you got to stick it out the entire day for us. Sometimes, on a hot day, you're beat. Like, an 8-hour day is a long day of fishing. I don't often fish 8 hours anymore because I'm usually working. But when I do go on a guided trip, I'm like, after 6 hours, like, I've had enough. Like, this is good. If you've caught a bunch of fish and you feel satiated, like, it's okay to say, hey, you know what, let's head it in and go grab a beer or something like that. That's totally okay. And like, don't feel like you have to wait till the guide says it's time to go. If you feel satiated, or you're dog tired and you're struggling, it's okay to say, hey, I've had enough. Even if the fishing is really good. Hey, ladies and gents, don't ever be afraid to ask to go to the bathroom. I had a couple of people before. I've had experiences where people have like held it all day long, and finally like get to the dock and they're running to the bathroom. And if obviously men, it's easier to just go kind of wherever oftentimes. But ladies, if you need to go to the bathroom, like, we know where we can go and get you some privacy so you can use the restroom. So don't ever be afraid to let us know, hey, I got to go to the bathroom. What do we do here? We'll certainly make sure you can relieve yourself. So I thought that was a fun one to add in there. So we get to the end of the day here. Hopefully it was a good day of fishing. First and foremost, make sure you have all your gear. Nothing is more frustrating than when I get home and I'm going through cleaning my boat and I find someone's rod tube, or I find someone's pack or something like that. Like, I'm working every day. I don't have time to like go to a post office and get it back to you. It just adds an extra layer of frustration to my day, having to figure out how to get something back to you. So just do a double check through the boat, look in the cooler. If you have a water bottle in there, make sure you take it with you. I got so many water bottles. I don't need any more. But you know, and I think all, you know, most guides have the same situation. So again, make sure you have all that gear. Square up on payment if necessary. Sometimes you know, you may have paid a deposit and you still owe the balance. Take care of that before you leave. And then the big question we get all the time is, you know, what's an appropriate tip? And I mean, it's a hard question to answer. I mean, if you do any reading on to what's recommended, 20%, but obviously, like, you know, that depends on, you know, kind of the day you had. And I would say you don't want to necessarily tip on number of fish caught. Obviously, the fish don't always bite. You know, did you have a good day? Was there a special moment there? Did your guide get you on the, you know, the best fish of your life, or, you know, personal best? Did they just work their tail off to get you no fish? You know, all those things should come into factor as far as a tip goes. And I think that's, you know, that's one of those things where whatever you kind of feel comfortable with is great. I will say tipping with like goods, like I'll give you something like that generally doesn't, especially gear, like we all get discounts on gear and have so much gear that usually doesn't, we rather have the money. And then parking lot beers. This is a good one. And you know, we talk about this once in a while as you know, our guide community, and you know, how often you sit around and have beers afterwards. And I think it's important to understand, you know, kind of a look into my world in my days. Usually, you know, my day is 10 to 12 hours long, with 8 hours of it being on the water. And then, you know, there's preparation in the morning, and then I got to go home, clean my boat, get all my gear squared away, get lunches prepped for the next day. And, you know, those things add up. And you also, if you have a family, you want to be present at home for those people as well, so that you can maintain and have a family. So if a guide politely declines to have a beer with you in the parking lot, don't be offended. They just work long days and they have a lot of work after they pull that boat out of the water. And I think that's important to realize, that it's not that they don't want to have a beer with you. It's that, you know, if I have a beer, then I suddenly, you know, my day, I add another hour to my day of getting things done. So, and I tend to lose a little bit of motivation after I have a beer or two. So it makes for a more challenging afternoon. Anyways, we get that question a lot. We have a beer, and sometimes I'm in the mood and I'll have a beer, and I get home and able to get things squared away just fine. But sometimes I want to get home and get things turned around for the next day. So, and this is kind of, you know, in my opinion, and I would say, you know, most people's opinion, I think what's a good guide, right? First and foremost, they have to be a good communicator, right? So if you've gone out with a guide for the first time, like it's nice to come, you know, after that day of fishing, take a moment, reflect on how that day went, and think about these bullet points here I'm about to show you, right? And say, well, is this guy worth going out with again? Or, you know, should I maybe try somebody else? But first and foremost, a guy needs to be a good communicator, right? They need to be able to articulate what they want you to do without picking up the rod and doing it themselves. And sometimes they have to pick it up to show you, but for the most part, they need to be able to articulate what it is they want you to do while they're sitting or standing behind you, so that you can do it. Shows up prepared, right? You guys should show up, things ready to go, you know, boat clean, organized, and ready to take you fishing for the day. That shouldn't cut into your time. And I've had people ask, like, you know, is it, you know, rigging up rods and stuff like that? Like, I think that's part of the day. You know, you get there, we rig up, either your rods, or we get the rods set for the day. And I would say that's kind of part of, like, the banter that how I, at least how I get my day going. I kind of like that part of the day where we, sometimes we do it in the boat, sometimes we do it stream side, sometimes, we do it in the parking lot, but I think that that's a good part of the day, like where we can kind of chat and set the tone for how the day is going to be. And then adjust for your skills. If you are not good at casting in the wind and you have a lot of wind coming at you, maybe that guy will make an adjustment so that that wind is maybe at your back, or that, they get you a little closer. We approach it from upstream instead of downstream. And I think that's the most important thing. And they can work on those skills to hopefully help you combat those weaknesses, but ultimately making those adjustments so that you can find success, right? If you are casting, if the guide says at the beginning of the day, I want you casting, inches away from the bank, and every cast you're making is 3 feet away from the bank, and you can't get it any further, that's on that guide to get you 3 feet closer so that you are hitting that spot with the abilities that you have, right? And so if they're not making those adjustments, it's okay to ask, hey, can you bump us in a little bit? I can't make my cast there. Or, hey, can you help me get that extra 3 feet? I think those things are really, really crucial. Is that they recognize that there's a shortcoming. And I can share a little story. I was down in the Keys, and the Keys guys have a reputation of being kind of a little brash or not so friendly. And we were out there, and my fishing partner, it was an extremely windy day. A little older gentleman, really, really choppy. I mean, I was struggling standing up the front of the bow when I was up fishing, and you could visibly see he was scared of falling in, right? As he should have been. I was scared of falling in. And there was areas where you could tuck in behind mangroves, and it was, it wasn't, the best spot on the flats, but there was some other species that could be caught, right? Because it was obvious that the person could not stand, right? Let alone make a cast in the situation we were. He just kind of like, well, if you can't stand up, then you don't get to fish, type of thing. And I ended up fishing most that day, which was really, really frustrating for me as someone who is a guide and would have made those adjustments. So again, I think that bullet point right there is a really important one and a good guide will do those things. He'll adjust it for your skills. And then brings a good mood, right? My motto is, it's everybody's day of fishing, right? And like, just because yesterday sucked or I didn't, have the best day of fishing doesn't mean that should show the next day, right? Each day is a new day, and I'm excited to meet you. I'm excited for our day of fishing, and I'm going to show up with a good mood and go from there. So, and then patient. It is a difficult thing to teach people to fly cast, especially while you're trying to, in some situations, control a moving boat and also teach someone how to cast all at the same time, and then you add an element of wind or, any other factor that can come into that. It gets to be a lot, and your guide should be patient. If you continually keep doing something that they ask you not to do, like at some point the guy's patience is going to wear out. So like, if you cast and you bring your rod tip up and your rod's tip's supposed to be down, and after every single cast the guy doesn't tell you, hey, put your rod tip down, after about half the day I'm just going to stop saying that to you. And like, not that I'm going to blow up or anything, I'm just going to stop, and you're probably not going to get the right presentation, which will ultimately affect the way you catch fish. But I'm gonna give it a whole heck of a lot of an effort before I get to that point, right? And then a guy shouldn't yell at you, right? There's situations where I will yell, and it's usually because of excitement, right? And if I see that a fish has come up and maybe you're looking down at something else, and I'm gonna yell, hey, set the hook, right? Like those are situations where the moment it needs to happen now. But yelling at you because you did something wrong or made a mistake is completely unacceptable. And if someone yells at you, like that's not a good guide. Don't don't go back out with them. If it's real bad, have them take you back to the launch. But yeah, that one's pretty obvious. The guide should acknowledge you. And then is it on their phone while guiding, right? At times, like, again, people, I'm constantly answering phone calls, emails, text messages all the time. At lunchtime, sometimes I'll pick up my phone and I'll kind of go through and try to catch up with some of those things while we have lunch. But as far as when I'm guiding, your guide shouldn't be on their phone, in my opinion. Like, they need to be paying attention to what's going on there. If they're looking at their phone, they're not obviously paying attention to what's going on in the water, which you're paying them to do. So, yeah, so if your guide's on their phone, it's probably not the right person to be out with. And then ultimately, a teacher and a cheerleader, right? We're there to teach you. You shouldn't come into a day embarrassed by the fact that you can't cast, or, nervous because you can't cast. Like, we're there to help you. And especially if you were straightforward and from the get-go, like, we're excited to show you and hopefully make you a better angler. And then when you do some good stuff and succeed, like, we're excited for you, right? We're out there to vicariously kind of fish through you and get you to the point where you can find success. And I think that's a good one. You should get some compliments throughout the day, because no matter how bad of an angler you may be, there's always like a bright spot in the day that you did something right. So yeah, you should be getting a couple compliments here and there. And then the don'ts, right? This is the fun list for me, right? So don't try and cancel last minute, or cancel because of weather. Obviously, if it's unfishable or dangerous, like, we're not going to be out there. But if you see that it's supposed to rain 3 days before, you can't cancel on somebody that way. We only get X amount of days to work throughout a year, and every single one of them means something to us. And canceling last minute because you forgot to put it in your calendar, or those types of things, that's unacceptable. And you'll probably be asked to pay for the full day. So don't be late. That one, again, pretty straightforward on that one, right? And then don't show up without the proper license. You wouldn't believe how often this will happen. After it says it like 7 times on all my preparation forms of be ready for the day. And we'd get to the stream out somewhere in the driftless, and they're like, "Oh shoot, was I supposed to have a fishing license? I forgot to get a fishing license." And then in most places we don't have reception, so we got to go and drive somewhere, and that just makes for a really, really rough start to the day. And you may lose the spot that you were hoping to go to, or it changes the plans for which the guide had, and that's never great. And he'll probably be a little grumpy with you throughout the day. So pinning fishing spots, like with a GPS or a phone, right? That's a no-no. Like, if you're gonna do that, don't let us see it. That there's no. If you want to fish all our bad spots, pull out a GPS and start pinning spots, and we'll show you where all the bad fishing spots are. If you want to go back to these spots, just ask us. Like, hey, do you mind if I come back, or like something? Just communicate, right? Like marking them with the GPS point, it's not cool. We've worked put in a lot of hours to figure some of this stuff out. And sharing those especially would be really inappropriate. So please respect that part of it for all guides. Talk politics. We're here to fish. There's no need to talk about politics. I mean, obviously, if a guide asks you about it, sure, but that probably isn't going to happen. And then this one, be easily offended by instruction. Sometimes, like I kind of mentioned before, when a situation is happening on the water, this is especially, I think, a lot of saltwater guides get a bad rap for this. And one thing it's important to understand is in a situation where, or let's say musky fishing is another great example, right? It's it's a day where that opportunity may only come once in that day, right? And we don't want you to screw that up. We want you to get that fish, right? That's why we're there. Um, and if we get a little hasty with what we're trying to say to you, is likely because I don't have time to slowly explain. And so sometimes my tone will change. It's not because I'm upset or anything like that. It's like, if I just want you to get this right so that we don't screw up, right? And so don't be offended by some of those really intense moments where maybe that, that permit is swimming in front of you, and the guide's, his voice is getting high, kind of more intense and more intense and more intense, because that fish is getting closer and closer to being gone forever, right? And we want you to hit that and get that accomplishment, right? So don't be easily offended by that. Most of the time, like, there's nothing meant by it other than that we really want you to get that fish, and it shows in our voice. Don't tip with a credit card. No guide ever likes that. Most shops don't like that. Cash is king, right? If you can, you're gonna go on a guided trip, stop at an ATM and have cash for a tip. It just makes everybody's life easier. And again, tipping with a credit card in most situations is kind of a major pain in the butt for everyone involved on the backside of things. So, and don't stop trying, right? We're not going to quit on you if you don't quit on us. If you stop trying, and I can visibly see it, I generally ask, hey, are we done, or are you're gonna keep at it here? Because if you're gonna stop trying, like, I'm working my butt off. Like, I don't want to be out here if you're not gonna also be out here and be present. So stick with it. Don't quit on us. We won't quit on you. And then some words of wisdom. This is to keep your guide happy and to have yourself a nice day out there on the water with a guide. Flies aren't free, right? If you throw them in the tree, don't just break them off. Oftentimes, a guide has got a couple of special tricks, or he'll show you how to get a fly out. We may have this huge box filled up with all these flies, but that's supposed to last us the entire season. And if you've ever looked at the price tag on some of the flies, unfortunately, unless you're tying them yourself, there's no real major discount you're getting on flies as a guide, right? You're paying about the same price everybody else is. And every time you break up a deer hair bug in a tree, there goes $10. And that stuff will add up over the course of a day and over the course of a week. So flies aren't free. Ask the guide, how would you like me to get this out, right? And if he says, well, break it off, then that's his choice or her choice. No whining, right? Nobody likes a whiner. If it's raining, we're all in the rain, right? It's not like it's raining on you but not me. I'm out here and I'm not even getting the fish. So kind of, there's no reason to whine. We're all dealing with the same situations. Yes, the wind really sucks. I'm sorry it's blowing your cast back at you. It's trying to pull the boat into the bank, and my arm is about ready to fall off from trying to keep us from running into a tree, right? So, like, we're all dealing with something, right? So try to avoid whining in the boat. I like this picture of Bill here. He's crossing across the really deep channel, walking back from the flats. Embrace the adventure. This is a great little story I'll tell you guys here. I got a little bit of time. So if you notice, you look at this photograph here, on the right side, you can see there's something missing from his oar, which would be the blade of his oar. And this is on our trip just recently to Patagonia. And we were floating a river down into another river to do this like 16-mile float. It's a real big one. And it's really fast, really nasty water. And you definitely want both oars functioning. Well, one broke off partway into the float down into the river we were about to fish. And our guide did an excellent job with one oar navigating us out of the rapids into an eddy, and jumped out of the water like neck deep and stopped the boat and did a really great job. And he's like, I don't know what's going to happen here. Like, I don't know if I have reception, the only way out of here is by foot. I'll call somebody if I got reception and see, and like, you know, long story short, he had a buddy and he had reception. He had a buddy. His buddy met him at the boat launch. He hiked through the willowy jungle to back to the boat launch, came back, had an oar. And the things that hold the oars in to the boat is called an oar lock. And these are specifically made for these specific oars. Well, the oars that he brought were different oars. So those didn't fit, but luckily he had a second pair because he's a prepared guide. And those fit the oars that were supposed that we the new oars that we had. And so he goes to change these out, and there's like a screw that holds them kind of in place. So the guide goes around and he unhooks one of the screws and pulls the oar lock out and puts the new oar lock in and slides the new oar in. Woohoo, great. And then he goes to the other one and he goes to do that and realizes that at one point the screw that was in there fell out, and he replaced it with an Allen wrench screw. And we didn't have an Allen wrench in the boat. So we thought, right? And so we're breaking off the tip of our knives, like pocket knives, like trying to get something that'll fit in there to loosen this up. Otherwise, we'd be in basically the same situation we are with one oar. And we're kind of reached a point where like, we're going to have to he's going to have to walk back out and try to find the right Allen wrench or something like that. And I'm like, wait a second. I have one Allen wrench for my camera that attaches my tripod thing to the bottom of my camera. And I dug it out. I'm like, hey, I got this one Allen wrench. What do you think it fits? What are the chances it fits? And it fit, believe it or not. And it was unbelievable. That probably was the story we tell the most about this entire float trip, even though the fishing was fantastic. And, the guide was able to turn the day around real fast for us. But that, sometimes stuff happens, and, we try to be as prepared as we can be. Where you are in Mother Nature and you're out there. And so embrace the adventure is all I can say. And guides want good fishing for you. We want it almost as bad as you want, if not more. We have to be out there every day. If the fishing gets bad, we feel it, because you get to go home and say, boy, that day sucked. We have to go back out there the next day and do it again. So we really, really just know that your guide wants the fishing to be good, and he wants you, to be getting into fish. That's not always the case, obviously, right? We're dealing with the natural world, and sometimes the fish just aren't biting, despite all the different things we try. But just know that your guides, they want good fishing for you, right? We really do. Respect gets respect, right? I think that's pretty self-explanatory. Treat your guide with respect, and they're going to do the same for you. The guides work hard. And I think that's a pretty straightforward one, and maybe a good one for life. So, and then most importantly, have fun out there. So, that's all I got here as far as this goes. I'll open it up for some questions here in a second. But if anyone is interested, I'll do a little plug here. I do still have some dates left this summer. If anybody's interested. Get in touch sooner than later. The dates I do have there's not many, but there's still some available, and will be for a little while yet. We're going back to New Orleans for a redfish trip. We have a redfish camp coming up. I'm going to be sending out some details on that. I know there's a bunch of people who are interested, and I have kind of a going list. If you are interested in finding out more information, drop me an email. Give me a call, whatever, and I'll get you on that list. That'll probably go out this week. And then I leave for Campeche on Tuesday for some baby tarpon fishing in Mexico. That's been a fantastic trip. And I think we'll be going back probably in the following February 24. So if you are interested in doing some baby tarpon fishing, I can get you more information on what that involves. It's a wonderful trip. Really, really good intro to saltwater fishing. We stay in a beautiful city of Campeche, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and there's some fantastic fishing right out the door there. So, if any of those things interest you, feel free to reach out outside of this, and we'll try to keep questions and stuff to this topic if we can. So let me get back to sharing my screen here. There
Thanks,
we go.
Kyle. Thanks,
All right.
Kyle. That was awesome. Very cool. And yeah, it's so good. It's just great to hear like the other side's perspective and kind of think about how that day goes from your point of view. And because I've had some, I haven't done a lot of guided trips, but I've had some really absolutely fantastic days and just like magical moments that I was just grateful to be able to share the experiences that I've had like out in the water with those guides and with the people that I was fishing with. And I've also had some disappointments along the way too, but that turned out pretty well. So I think a lot of what you said there really rings true. Just be ready to roll with whatever gets thrown at you. Try to stay in a good mood. There were a couple of questions I was kind of curious, especially knowing that you fish the Wisconsin River so much. This may be you may have a different answer than most guides, but somebody was wondering about bare feet in the boat and what's your take on that. And maybe I'll ask you to give us your take on that, and then maybe if you could give us what maybe a guide who's not out on the Wisconsin River might say to that.
Sure. Yeah, I think so in my boat, like I prefer bare feet, and I encourage folks, if they are comfortable being barefooted, to be barefooted, right? My boat is designed to be barefoot in, that's part of it. Like it's got a comfortable floor to be barefoot on. I like being barefoot when I saltwater fish a lot, and oftentimes when you're saltwater fishing, you're going to be barefoot because it's nice to feel the line underneath your feet. And in a game where you got to make a quick cast, like all that stuff really makes a big difference. Now, if you don't like being barefoot and you don't feel comfortable being barefoot, don't be barefoot. And I would say, like, I would certainly, if I'm going to a river, I would ask the guide, hey, are you cool? And you want to be barefoot? Is it cool if I'm barefoot? Some guys will say absolutely not. You keep your shoes on. We have to get out in rocky situations, or this is not a good place to be barefoot. There's glass all over, something like that. So again, that goes back to asking that question, right? And I would say, if you want to be barefoot, ask your guide if you can be barefoot. If your guide is barefoot, you can probably make the assumption that you can also be barefoot. And then, wading on the Wisconsin, I wade barefoot all the time. Glass has been banned in the lower Wisconsin since, the 80s, like early 80s. And I haven't come across very much of it at all, if ever, in most situations. That said, I understand that, you are taking a risk, right? You can step on a stick that can do just as much damage as a piece of glass. But I also found in really sandy situations, there's not a real great piece of footwear to wear in those situations without getting filled with sand or something like that. So I found like kayak booties work pretty good out there. Something that's relatively tight fitting around the ankle, but also you have some good dexterity on your feet. So, you don't need like a hard sole necessarily, just something to protect your foot. And I find like some of those like kayaks booties or flats booties are actually really nice out there.
Sounds great. You touched on the bad weather thing, and I was curious if we could take the question just a little bit further. And a lot of times weather in Wisconsin is unpredictable, right? You've had to run across situations where you start the day and it's beautiful out and that bad weather pops up. Like, how do you guys handle that? And I mean, at some point you gotta stop fishing and take safety into, people's personal safety into, that's gonna be priority number one, right?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, and I mean, I have like 7 different weather apps on my phone and lightning alerts and all that kind of thing, where like I set up a proximity, and when that goes off, like I have like I don't care what the fishing is, like pack them up or taking shelter. If I can get us back to the boat launch, we're gonna do that. Otherwise, if it's too safe or it's unsafe to navigate, we're just going to take cover where we can. Um, and if it doesn't look like it's going to get any better and it's going to be nasty the rest of the day, like we'll call it. And generally, that's kind of a situational basis. Like if we usually once we've had lunch, like that's kind of like my point where like, well, this is just the day, right? Unfortunately this happened. Like, but if we hadn't even got to lunch yet, like generally I'll maybe only, I'll refund you back to like a half day or something like that. And so, each guide's different on that one and what their policy is. And like, again, mine's super situational, like how, where the day are we? You know what I mean? Is it, I don't want to be out there fishing if I don't think there's a chance, but oftentimes those days where like, the weather's not that great, like sometimes the fishing is really good. And you just got to be able to like put your rain jacket on and bear it, because you can really get into some good stuff out there again. But number one, like safety's number one. Like I don't want to go out there, there's lightning striking everywhere, and I certainly aren't going to have you out there, right? Like it's not worth it for me.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. No
I know
fish.
some people like always want to push it a little bit. I'm like, sorry guys, like
No,
nope.
no fish is worth it. Absolutely. Yeah. Somebody was asking, do you do wade fishing trips at all?
Yeah, like on the river, or like the Wisconsin River, or like we do
Either.
like
I know you do
driftless,
trout, right?
yeah, driftless trout trips. Yep. And most of the time for our bass fishing, we will get in the boat, but if you really want to do a lot of wading, like just let us know that and we'll take you to spots where we can do a lot of wading. But oftentimes, like there's limited amounts that you can get to. Like we won't be able to fish a full day necessarily, like without getting in a boat.
Yeah.
or a vehicle and driving around some more. At that point,
Yeah.
like you might as well just be in a boat.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, like a strict weighting, I would say, for bass anyways, I would say probably not.
Yeah. But for trout, you do. That's an option.
Yeah, trout is, that's all walking lane.
Yep. Very cool. I had a question for you that I'm always curious to know if guides, and like you talked a couple of times about like getting together with other guides and having these conversations. And I'm curious if the topic of fishing pressure ever comes up, at least here in Wisconsin. Like I know like you see pictures out west where like the parking lots are full and it's just one drift boat after another going down the rivers. And we don't really have that here. At least like not that I'm aware of here in Wisconsin, but do you talk about fishing pressure and how much is too much and how many boats you can put on the river in a day or in a season? Does that
Yeah,
thought go through your head?
that's a fantastic question, Mike. And I think it's yes. Short answer is yes. We certainly have that conversation, and we're certainly aware of it, because I mean, if you look at what's going on out west right now, I mean, it's some of the best rivers are basically those experiences have been completely ruined because there's just too many people there, right? And like it takes away from the whole point of it all, and so I think it's something that a lot of us are very much aware of. And then as far as like guide pressure and stuff like that, like I think one of the things we need to be as customers and as guides okay with like less fish, right? And like better experiences, kind of more quality over quantity. And I think that's kind of the important thing there, is like we need to realize that these things are not infinite. You know what I mean? Like this, yeah, the water will be there, but when we get to a point where you have so much fishing pressure, like the fish, they catch on, and suddenly that great experience is no longer that experience anymore, right? The reason that river was famous isn't there anymore, right? And so, yeah, I mean, it's certainly something we're aware of, right? And like for myself, like I kind of have a set number as to how many guides I would take on and how often sections of the rivers would get floated, right? Like I'm super, super conscious of, even like in my situation, right? Like I'm running across schools of fish, for example, right? And I could pound on those schools of fish every single day, but I know that like I need these fish to remain healthy and remain, bitey until, for the entire season and then on, right? And then you talk about fish mortality, even when you're catch release fishing. And so like, I whether I want to or not, I have to give some of these fish some breaks, you know what I mean? So like, there'll be certain times where it's like, no, like we hit those fish super hard yesterday. Like we're going to go fish a different stretch of water, or you just kind of have a different way you go through the water and you avoid some of those spots. And that's it's a tough call to make, especially if the day is kind of tough to not let into that temptation to go hit those fish. But ultimately, like we gotta be, like I'm kind of I'm out there every day, so I'm a bit of a steward of what's going on out there. And it's just one of the things I have to make that hard decision and hold myself to that standard and do that. So
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
it's a real thing. And that's a great question, because I mean, that's a big question right now in the industry, as far as, how much is too much, how much guide pressure is too much, right?
Yeah. And how many boats are you running out there in a typical day?
To
Two boats?
max. Yeah,
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know a little bit. I know like the folks at Tight Lines out of De Pere, Green Bay area, they have like one main river that they usually fish, and they kind of do the same thing like you're talking about. They break it up into sections,
Yep.
and they make sure that, you know, each one gets a rest like throughout certain intervals. And
Yep.
so they just kind of space it out and spread it out and try, like you said, try to make sure that, that fishery is vibrant and alive like for the whole season. So that's great to hear.
Yep.
Couple of real quick questions. Would you take a total beginner out? Like somebody calls you up and says, "Hey, I never fly fish before. Want to learn how to do that?" Is that something that you would hire a guide for? Or
Yeah.
yeah.
I do all the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yep. Absolutely.
Awesome.
Yep. No, I get people who will call me up and be like, "Hey, I'm looking to get into fly fishing. I've never done it before." Or maybe like, I found my, it's always like I found my grandma's old rod or my grandpa's old rod, and like I want to use it and try it. And so, yeah, it's a common thing we get. Oftentimes, like I encourage them to, if we have some time between now and when we're going to go on our guided trip, like, the Orbis has got, fly fishing 101 courses. TU's got, different courses, local fly shops generally running something, right? I encourage them to go do some of that. And then, the great internet, where it's got a million YouTube videos, like, try to at least educate yourself a little bit so that we're starting off on a little bit of a jump start. But, I mean, I take beginners out all the time.
Sure. And then real quick, like, what's a day guiding cost? Like if we're going to do, let's say, or when you do trout trips, is that one or two anglers?
So most of the time, the pricing is for up to two anglers.
Up to two
Right.
anglers.
So
Okay.
yeah, it's it's the same cost for me to go out there, right? And so like whether
Sure.
it is one or two anglers, once
Sure.
you get above two, sometimes we would take three people out trout fishing with one guide, but usually it's not all beginners. It'd have to be experienced. And so like again, that's pretty situational based. But usually once you get over two anglers, then it's like, okay, now you need another guide for that, and that just is what it is, right?
Yep.
And I think sorry, I lost my train of thought there.
That's okay. What's the cost on a
Oh
day
yeah,
trip?
sorry, yeah.
We're gonna go
Yeah.
for like, is that an 8-hour day? Is that typical?
Yep. So our 8-hour day is 550. Yep, and that includes
550.
lunch.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. So you
Yep.
split that two ways. That's pretty reasonable. Yeah.
Yeah.
With lunch. And
Yep.
I
Yeah,
know for a fact.
if you hired a plumber for 8 hours, it'd be a little more expensive than that. So.
Yeah, absolutely. They charge you by the minute as soon as they hit your driveway, but probably as soon as they leave the shop. But,
yeah. But no, I mean, yeah, that's why it's nice that price is, per two people. So it's nice to be able to split that cost.
do you want to field a fishing question as opposed to a guiding question? Can you do that for us?
Sure, yeah.
All right. Somebody had a question about bass leaders, and do you use Maxima for your
I do
bass
use
leaders?
Maxima, yeah.
Can you just maybe take 2 minutes and like talk us through your typical bass leader setup?
Yeah, for sure. Um, So oftentimes when you're building a leader, it's not so much about like what brand or whatever you're using. It's like the diameter of what the material is. And so usually like when you're transferring from one thickness to another, you're kind of cutting that in half each time, right? And so like, well, let's just use poundage for an example, right? So a lot of times I'll do a 40-foot, 40 pound, 20 pound down to 10 pound, right? That's like the simplest formula without it being just like a homeboy leader of like just a straight 40 pound or something like that, right? And so like I'll do 4 foot, 3 foot, 2 foot. That would make 9 feet, right? So 4, 3, 2, 40, 20, 10. Or like I'll go 40, 20, 12 sometimes, right? If I want something a little stouter. But that would be like the most simple one. I think honestly, like that formula right there is, I mean, you can add more sections in there, but I don't know why you necessarily would. You know what I mean? It's like more schools you got to carry. And I know, you know, if you were to really, really look at it, sure, it might turn over a little bit nicer if you're throwing like more delicate dry flies. And I think that that's probably something that would be, you maybe want to step down a little smoother there. But for like a bass leader, like 40, 20, 10 to make a 9 footer would be about what I do. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds great. Yeah. Well, it's like 20 after 9, so I think maybe we're going to wrap this up. Before we go, I will give another plug for you and your, you know, the business that you've built here. I could say that I've had one of the absolute best days of fishing was at your crash camp a few years ago. My friend Jason and the fish, like the fishing started out like we didn't touch a fish for the first 2.5 to 3 hours, and we kind of sat there looking at each other. And the guide, we were out with Ben, and he's like, "Why don't you guys just chill out, like have a beer, have a drink, just like look around, like let's just take 5." And we did that, and then all of a sudden, like we heard a little commotion down a ways, and I had never really experienced a crash before, and it from that moment on for like the rest of the trip, it was on, and it was such an unbelievable experience. And I feel so grateful that I got to experience that with Jason, and Ben was awesome that whole time that we were out there on the water. And so I just want to say thank you I mean, you could have kept this to yourself and just be like, oh, I got this, let's just do trout fishing and we'll do these international trips and stuff. And that's my guiding. And then my spare time, I'll go do this bass fishing here. But to be able to take people out there and share those experiences with them, it's pretty cool. So thank you for doing that.
No, I appreciate it. And I mean, on that note, like, I mean, it is a really, really special resource that everyone needs to experience. I mean, like whether you like to fish or not, like go paddle it down with a canoe. Like it is truly, I mean, I've been lucky enough to travel to a lot of the famous places to go fishing. And I mean, I still think that the lower Wisconsin River is like right up there with one of the coolest places on earth. Like it is just a magical place. I mean, just for its the geologic history, the whole thing. I mean, it's just an amazing place. So
yeah,
happy to share and get people out there. I mean, that's the beauty of my job is I get to share some real special places with people. So
yeah, that's great.
So,
yep. Thanks for coming on.
Super. Yeah, thanks everyone for tuning in.
Really appreciate everybody sticking around, and we'll sign off, and we will certainly see you next month. I'll give a plug. Our banquet's coming up. We're in Oshkosh this Saturday night, so there's still some tickets available. You can go online and get tickets for that, and hope to see a few of you out there. It'll be our first one in 3 years that we've been able to get together in person. So looking forward to that, and then we'll have another episode of Talking Trout coming up in March. So, and it'll be fishing. It'll be primetime fishing time by then. So hopefully we'll see some of you out in the water then. So thanks again, Kyle, for stopping by and sharing your knowledge with us. Really appreciate it. All right. Have a good night, everybody.